احنا حبيبي.
Okay, why I need a translation?
Right. Well, he's just saying things like, kill all the Jews and everything, and if...
Hi, my name is Jamal, and this is my take on the Ask Project episode titled The One Where Corey Loses His Patience with Palestinians. The episode was uploaded June 25th, 2014. First of all, I'm glad that Corey got rid of his translator. Of course, I'm not sure if the translator quit or he got fired or whatever. But I'm happy because that translator is a big fat liar. Also, that translator, I don't think he is Arab. If he is Arab, he is Israeli Arab, and because of his accent, and also he calls the Israeli army, he calls them IDF, which is Israeli Defense Forces. There is no Palestinian who calls Israeli army as Israeli Defense Forces. If we want to call them something, we call them IOF, Israeli Occupation Forces. Anyway, your translator, okay, needs to be culturally aware and know that the term Jewish and Israeli are interchangeable in Palestine. Politically speaking, if someone says the Jews did this or that, it means the Israeli, or that's what he means. The Israelis did this or that. So here is the part where, the most important part where the translator makes a big fat lie. When Corey asks one of the kids and says to him, when the IDF comes and enters your house, why do you get upset? So the kid goes on and on and on in Arabic, okay? And at the end, Corey asks the translation, okay, what did he say? And the translation just says, oh, he said, just kill all the Jews. And that's a big fat lie. And I will show you the clip now, and I'll translate it. And remember, when we say Jews, we mean Israelis. And when IDF comes to our houses, okay, they come to arrest, demolish the house, or fight. They are coming to fight. They are not coming on a social visit. So the reaction of the kid to this question was very emotional reaction.
إذا لما يجي الجيش الدفاع ويدخل على البيت عندك، ليش بتزعل؟
شو بفضل عرضه اذا بيجي يهودي هان، مش تقول هيك بقتله هو واللي معاه اخرى، وازعم يهودي بقتله. انا قلت لك بدنا نمسك يهودي هان بدنا نذبحه هو واللي بيتضامن معاه. وصل لكل العالم، وصل لو مين ما يكون، كندا، بريطانيا، امريكا، ما تفرقش علينا. فلسطينيين احنا حبيبي.
Okay, why I need a translation?
Right. Well, he's just saying things like, kill all the Jews and everything, and if...
Okay, but...
It's very strange that Mr. Shuster got himself in this situation. I was wondering, I mean, didn't he find somebody else to accept those kids? Anyway, he wrote on his video, sorry, it's a long time building up, which for me is really very strange to say, because it means every time he speaks with Palestinians, I guess he gets angrier and angrier. Anyway, Mr. Shuster used many false premises to build his case, and with those teenagers and children. In this video, I will go over some false statements and arguments made by Mr. Shuster. One of the kids says, sooner or later, we will take our land back. Mr. Shuster insists on knowing how. And the kids, of course, give him different answers, where some of them like by studying, by being dedicated. And one kid says we need a few years to become stronger, by becoming stronger. Shuster, in a very sarcastic way, asks him, do you think you will? Okay. This is really very arrogant of Mr. Shuster, who seems to be drunk with power. It seems he doesn't know or doesn't learn from his own history. How many times were the Jews defeated and led or taken as slaves out of Palestine and dispersed all over the world. Mr. Shuster forgets that things change, countries rise, and countries fall all the time. When Israel was established in 1948, Palestinians and Arab countries were weak. Palestine was under mandate, so they had no power or say in the matter, of course. Jordan, for example, okay, the general who was in charge of the army was Club Pasha, he was a British general. So even our armies, okay, were not our own. So this is not 1948. 2020 definitely is not 1928, and things do change. Let's take your war in 2006 in Lebanon. You have a group of fighters with no air force, with no tanks, okay, and they stood up against you for 2 months. And probably you remember how many tanks were destroyed. It was a shock for the Israelis. Israel went into Lebanon thinking that they will do it just like that. And I remember Paris making different objectives. We will not stop the war unless we get this and that and that. Well, after 2 months of tasting Lebanese people punishment, okay, Israel withdrew without even getting one objective done. Now, yes, Israel is very strong. Nobody can deny that. And yes, they have a great air force, and yes, they use it in destroying civilians and non-civilians. Whatever they find in their ways, they will hit civilians as much as possible and infrastructure just to put pressure on those who fight them back or who fight back. But now, these days, even just before the explosion that took place in the port in Lebanon, Israel launched an attack in Syria and killed by accident, according to them, a member of Hezbollah. They jumped immediately saying it was by mistake, we didn't know, we didn't mean to. Ask yourself this question. Would Israel apologize for killing an Arab 30 years ago? No, they won't. But now, they don't want the retaliation of Hezbollah, and they know they'll get in trouble. So things do change. Let's take the war in Gaza in 2014. So the Palestinian resistance in Gaza, after Israel withdrew in 2006, and they did not withdraw except because of the fighting. They couldn't take it anymore. It was too much for them. So they withdraw and they make a siege and embargo, all this kind, sea, air, land, everything. So you have Gaza in a big jail kind of thing. Israel launches a war in 2014, and the war lasted about 7 weeks. And yes, Israel with its air force destroyed a lot and killed more than 1,400 civilians. Yes, they did. You cannot deny that. Yes, you are very strong and you can kill as many as you can. That's fine, just to put pressure on those who stand up against you. You are trying to incite people to hate those who stand against you. But the resistance survived, okay? And I remember myself watching Israeli soldiers in Israeli hospitals after a few days of the war crying. And one of them, I remember saying, he said something like, we went into Lebanon thinking we know our enemy. What we found there are our equals, or something like, those people are trained as well as we are. This is not 1948, where one village probably would have one hunting rifle, okay, or a BB gun. Things changed, Mr. Corey. Things change and will change. Now ask yourself this question. Why doesn't Israel go into Gaza and occupy it? Can they do that? Yes, I'll tell you they can do that. They are much stronger, definitely. So why doesn't Israel do that? Because this is not 1948. Probably they will lose not less than 2,000 Israeli soldiers in this war if it happens. And Israel cannot afford to lose this number. Also, after they occupy Gaza, the war will not stop. And the war will change into guerrilla warfare. And the strikes will continue. So it is not 1948. Now ask yourself this question. What if the resistance in Gaza, Palestinian resistance, gets or has air force and tanks. Of course, you'll jump and say they will never get air force or tanks. You are absolutely 100% correct. I agree with you. They will never get that. That's true. Okay, let's imagine a neighboring Arab country becoming democratic, and the people elect a leader who will do what the people want. Okay, a leader who is willing to fight, like in Gaza and like in Lebanon. They are willing to fight, and they have air force, and they train their soldiers to be strong soldiers, not for show, and they have tanks, and they have a big budget. You think it is still 1948? It's not. And more years to come, things will change definitely. So you should not have been arrogant and condescending to those kids. Those kids, even if they had the intellect to answer your questions or argue with your arguments, okay, their English is so poor, and you're dependent on a poorer translator or a liar. I'm sure he can translate, but probably he is a liar. Okay, is Jerusalem mentioned in the Quran? Yes, Jerusalem is mentioned in the Quran. Masjid al-Aqsa is mentioned in the Quran, and the Holy Land is mentioned in the Quran. Mr. Shuster says to the kids, when the kids said, we will fight for our land, we are willing to sacrifice ourselves for our land, Mr. Shuster argues that only stupid people and morons will risk their lives for a land. What are you doing in Palestine, Mr. Shuster? Aren't you risking your life? What about the Jews who came in 1948 and occupied Palestine? Were they morons and idiots or stupid? That's your statement. So it should apply to you and to the Jewish people. When one of the kids joked and said he is an American, Mr. Shuster told him that the kid was a colonizer. Of course, this statement is really false. If Native Americans are fighting an occupation now, your statement is true and correct. But since Native Americans are Americans now with full rights and no one is persecuting them, okay? So if a person becomes American now, no, he is not colonizing America or Native Americans. Unlike what the Jews are doing, where they are persecuting daily Palestinians and occupying their land and treating them badly and controlling their lives, space, all kinds of borders, sea, land, controlling the economy, controlling the movement, everything. So your argument is twisted and not true. Mr. Shuster asked the kids to define themselves as Arab, and he said something like, you're Arabs, right? And the kids said, yeah, we are Arabs. And he said, this is not Arab land, so you are occupiers or you are colonizers, because Islam, according to him, came 1400 years ago. First of all, Mr. Shuster, we are children of Ishmael, who was in this land way before Isaac was even born. That's number one. Obviously, Mr. Shuster doesn't know a lot about our history, as he tried to pretend to be in front of the teenagers. Here is a lesson. Arabs are two kinds, Yemenites and the Ishmaelites. In Arabic, we call them al-Arab al-Ariba wal-Arab al-Musta'riba, which means the original Arabs, the Yemenites, and al-Musta'riba, those who became Arabs, the Ishmaelites. It is true that we call ourselves Arabs, Palestinian Arabs, that's true. But why do you assume that we came 1400 years ago when Islam reached the area? Is it not possible that we are descendants of the Canaanites and our ancestors converted to Islam when Islam came? Is it not possible that we are descendants of intermarriage between the children of Isaac and the children of Ishmael, and our ancestors converted to Islam and associated themselves with the Arabs? I remember reading in your Torah that the second son, or the first son actually, of Isaac married the daughter of Ishmael. Read your Torah. Is it not possible that our ancestors existed in Palestine way before Abraham came? Why do you assume we came from Arabia? Because we call ourselves Arabs? When there are Christian Arabs in Palestine, do you think they came from Arabia? They associate, this is the culture, they are Arabs. But probably they go back to the time of Jesus. So please do not assume that we came 1400 years ago. But you should know that Abraham is not from there. According to your books, he is not from Palestine. He came to Palestine from Ur. This is my take on this episode, and I tried to show the untrue arguments or deceptive arguments. Hopefully better questions will be asked, different ways of asking these questions will be used. Maybe a translator who really understands the culture, okay? And maybe you ask intellectuals. That's it. Thank you for watching.